Chapter 181 Let's Laugh, Part 1. Several spotlights shone on Batman, making him squint, looking like a bat that had been sleeping in a dark cave but was awakened by an explorer's flashlight. I advise you not to make a move now. Schiller turned to look at Batman, but saw no expression on his face. He was no longer the Bruce who had just debuted. It was almost impossible to tell what he was thinking from his outward appearance. Why? Batman's voice remained low. Schiller turned back to the stage, the spotlight sweeping over him and making his glasses gleam. He said, "You'll have to be patient. The show is just beginning. I don't think there's anything worth watching." Batman remained unmoved, his expression serious. Even if he moved the kidnapping to a theater, it's still just a crime. He's a madman. He is indeed a madman, but different from other madmen. What's different about madmen? Then why are you sitting here instead of rushing down to stop him? Although I advised you, I couldn't stop you, and I couldn't stop you either. Batman remained silent. Because he piqued your interest, because you were also wondering how the play would begin. Because the owl is your enemy. Perhaps your indulgence is tinged with a sense of vengeful pleasure. Just as Batman was about to deny it, Schiller said, "It's certainly interesting to see these actors suffer. But if you still think of him as just an ordinary madman, then you're the one who's going to suffer." Batman's brow furrowed deeper, but the audience on stage drew their attention back to him. The Joker, holding the small iron rod he used to strike the triangle, held it to the mouth of a bound, obese man and said, "All right, you choose an audience member and have him read the clues on the ticket to you." I. The fat man was covered in sweat. After being suspended in midair by the rope for so long, he was exhausted. The clown pouted and suddenly, he straightened his body, then tucked the hair on both sides behind his ears, revealing his eyes. He deliberately kicked his leg forward and took a step, as if marching in formation, until he reached another man next to him. He then took off the glasses the man was wearing and put them on his own face. He held the small iron rod to his lips, as if holding a microphone, cleared his throat, and said, "Next up is an in-depth analysis from Jack, the world's most professional psychology expert." Schiller in the audience narrowed his eyes, and Evans instinctively moved to the side of the aisle, seemingly wanting to get away from his professor. "You're making a complete fool of yourselves, buddy." The clown walked over to the fat man and said, "Your arrogance is all built on a safe environment. You stand in a safe conference room, dressed in suits, using the wealth accumulated by your ancestors as capital, thinking you control everything, indulging in the thrill of being the mastermind behind everything. But when your supposedly unbreakable great beliefs are put into practice, they turn into heartache over the loss of vested interests. In fact, you are no different from ordinary people who would feel heartbroken for a whole night if they lost $5. All great goals eventually turn into nothing more than the most mundane regrets and heartaches. And when you truly become like ordinary people, you lose everything. After that, what else is there? A fat, bloated body? A soul devoid of originality? As actors, you are such failures that you can't even put on a good show on your own. What are you thinking? I know everything. It's so difficult to beg for mercy from a madman." The fat man made grunting noises, his face turning bright red. Just like the clown said, even the most self-proclaimed mastermind, suspended on stage by a rope, with everyone watching his ugly antics, cannot remain calm and collected. "Since you don't want to choose, then I'll choose for you." The Joker pushed up his glasses and said, "I'm sure our Professor Rodriguez has been waiting for a long time." The obese man seemed to choke suddenly, squeezing out a few words through gritted teeth. No, this is against the rules." "Shut up." The clown suddenly went berserk again, frantically slapping the fat man's face with the small iron rod, rendering him unable to utter a word in rebuttal. The obese man seemed afraid that he would do something drastic again, so he mumbled something and remained silent. Schiller stood up from his chair and said, "It's an honor to be the first, but before that, I have a better suggestion for this game. Would you like to hear it?" The clown squinted at him, and everyone could feel the tense atmosphere on the field, as if an invisible battle had begun, with two madmen clashing over intruding on each other's territory. "A better suggestion?" the Joker emphasized, grinning as he said, "You better make sure it's good, or I'll take it as a forfeit. Of course, this gentleman wants me to give him a clue, but he can't just leave me with nothing. I'd like to add a rule that if they want the clue, they have to grant a request from the audience." After a few seconds of stunned silence, The clown burst into maniacal laughter and exclaimed, "Oh, you're a genius." Suddenly, his face darkened, and he said, "Do you think I would say that? What a terrible idea." Schiller interrupted him, saying, "All right, then I take back that suggestion. I only have one question. May I lie?" The clown stared straight at him, his lips curling downwards in a vicious smirk, and muttered under his breath, "I told you, I hate this name. Why don't you let this gentleman decide whether to grant my request and obtain the real clues, or to do nothing and risk receiving a lie? Say yes." "Haru!" A shrill female voice rang out as a woman hanging higher up shouted, "Say yes to his demands. Do you want us all to get false answers? We'll die." Another male voice chimed in, "That's right. We choose the first one." Schiller patted the back of the chair in front of him, making a slight noise, and said, "I'm letting this gentleman choose. He's just a low-ranking member of parliament. He represents nothing." "Yes, that's right. How can such an important decision be made by a low-ranking member of parliament? We should vote, and the votes should be distributed according to rank. Only senior councillors can make decisions. Don't forget that. You old geezers. Even at a time like this, you're still thinking about—" The clown's shoulders suddenly began to shrug, and his laughter changed from a low chuckle to a loud laugh. After a while, as if he had laughed until he was tired, he wiped his eyes and said, "This is really kind of interesting." Haru trembled, his fat lips twitched, and he uttered a few words, saying, I choose the first one. I can grant him one request. Please tell me the truth." Before the clown could even begin, Schiller took his own turn, saying, "All right, my request is, remove the mask, sir." No, I can't," Haru cried out in terror, his eyes constantly glancing at Falcone. "I regret it. I want to choose the second one." "You won't get another chance," the clown said with a grin. "You already said you'd agree to his request." As he spoke, he ripped off the fat man's mask, revealing a large, fat head and ears underneath. "Wild Boar Harris." Falcone smiled, clearly recognizing him. "Didn't your father Bruno teach you? If you put on a mask, never take it off." Haru was ashen-faced. His true identity had been exposed, and not only him but his family, his power, and his wealth would all never see the light of day again. The mask is not afraid of the Godfather, but the person beneath it is. The mask will not die, but the person beneath it will. The people who had been arguing on stage fell silent. The clown then strode to the center of the stage, opened his arms, tilted his head, and asked them, "Why are you all so serious? He chose the result you wanted. Why don't you smile happily?" "Mr. Jack, may I reveal the answer now?" Schiller was like a ruthless NPC going through the motions. The clown looked disappointed, like a child, and said, "What a pity. I should have included an interview segment here. I wanted to play a little longer." Ignoring his reaction, Schiller picked up the crumpled piece of paper, unfolded it, and read aloud, "Artemis is more beautiful than Athena." It was obvious to the naked eye that the group of people hanging on the stage were stunned for a moment, and then fell silent, each with their own thoughts. The clown tapped his triangle and shouted, "All right, that's all over. Next. You'd better sit down. It's none of your business." Schiller readily agreed and sat down. Batman said to him, "You're a real devil." "Likewise." Then, the clown walked up to a tall, thin man and slammed the triangular iron into his ear, making the man shake his body frantically, trying to get away from the madman. "It's your turn. Who do you want to choose?" I choose Falcone." The clown first smirked sharply downwards, then twitched the muscles around his nose, revealing a somewhat fierce expression, before laughing again. "Then, please welcome Evans Falcone." He waved his arm, and a spotlight shone on Evans. Schiller, standing beside him, slapped the back of his chair and shouted, "I protest! Why is he introduced by a host? And why is he followed by lights? This is discrimination. We all bought tickets. We paid the same amount of money. Protest invalid." The clown then turned his gaze to Evans, who paused, seemingly surprised that someone had chosen him. 3 minutes into the play, he already couldn't understand what was going on, and now he was busy unpacking crumpled paper from the popcorn bucket, trying to piece it back together into a complete sheet. Suddenly, he twitched, a somber expression creeping onto his face. He stood up and said, "First of all, my name is not Evans." He gave a sinister smile and said to the tall, Thin Man. Secondly, you can make another choice. Option 1 or option 2? I choose 2. I choose 2. It's his turn to give the answer. Alberto's cold voice rang out. The answer is that the button in your hand corresponds to that fat man. When Alberto uttered those words and they landed on the ground, the entire arena fell silent. No one had expected this answer. The answer Schiller had given earlier was like a mythical riddle, full of incomprehensible metaphors, and even for the people of Gotham, it was a bit premature. But the answer Alberto gave the next second was so straightforward. It's like a problem where the first sub-question asks you to find the general solution to a calculus equation, and the second sub-question asks you what you ate for breakfast. Wait, said the tall, thin man who was hanging there. You're lying. This doesn't match the first answer at all. Because you chose number 2, it might actually be a lie, Alberto said with a shrug. But the tall, thin man heard his companions begin to whisper among themselves. Haru is too heavy. He's very close to the ground. Even if the rope is lowered slowly, his belly will definitely hit the ground sooner than the others. Yes, and this madman might have written several answers in completely different styles, so maybe that person wasn't lying. Anyway, Haru won't live much longer. Falcone knows his true identity. He's doomed. Whether he dies sooner or later, he's going to die anyway. Then let's press it. Press it. Why not? Chapter 182 Let's Laugh, Part 2. Everyone present heard their whispers, just as the members of the Owl Court thought. If Alberto lied and pressed the button, it wouldn't be Haru who died, but someone else, and it wasn't just a 1 in several tens chance that it would be them. Everyone felt that such a chance wouldn't fall on their own. If Alberto wasn't lying, killing Haru wouldn't have resulted in any loss for them. On the contrary, it would have avoided the risk of Haru landing first and detonating the bomb. Just as they said, Haru, whose mask has been removed, will die sooner or later. Even if he doesn't die today, the Godfather won't let him see the sun the next day. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. You can't press. Sherry, are you crazy? You want to kill me. You can't press. Haru started crying desperately, tears and snot covering his face, his fat body twisting and turning. Hey! Gordon suddenly stood up, pointed his gun at the tall, thin man and said, You can't press it. Murder is illegal. I'll arrest you. Really? Detective. Schiller stood up and said, He just pressed a button far away, and another person died. What evidence do you have that he killed him? What are you planning to use as the murder weapon? The button? Please, officer, don't listen to them. Save me. Haru screamed and cried. Falcone said, Officer, you can't just shoot without evidence, but you can ask him to prove his identity as a police officer. Even if he doesn't have a driver's license or other identification, he should at least take off his mask. The tall, thin man cried out in a shrill voice. No, there's no such rule. You can't reveal my identity. Quickly, Sherry, kill him. How do you know his belly won't hit the ground during the next descent? We'll all die then. Don't press it. I don't want to die. If you press it, your mask will be ripped off, and you and your family will all die. You can't press that button. You know in your heart that this is murder, and I will arrest you. Of course you can press it. This detective has no evidence, and police rules don't apply here. Like a chaotic montage film, everyone is shouting their own reasons, the light slides from one person's face to another, and in less than 2 seconds, a shot doesn't even have time to focus before switching to the next one. In the end, it was only when the clown frantically banged on the triangle that the argument stopped. Cherry was already drenched in sweat, and Haru was deathly pale. Suddenly, as if he had just realized something, Haru said, The first answer points to a woman. If you dare let Cherry press the button, I'll press mine too. No! A woman hanging high in the air shouted, You're insane! Cherry is my lover. I'll have him kill you first, you fat pig, you idiot. Haru, please have mercy, you're already dead. Falcone knows who you are. You know you're going to die, so why aren't you willing to do anything to help us survive? The woman suddenly started sobbing again. You're the one who's crazy. You bitch. Do you really think Chelly is some kind of European nobleman? He's just a liar, a poor sailor. You two are a match made in heaven. If I die, I will drag you all down with me. Haru shouted, spittle flying everywhere. That shitty Owl Court. That shitty senior counselor. I've had enough. A conman who made his fortune by lying. A whore who rose to power by offering herself up. And you guys, do you really think you're some big shot? You've always looked down on me. Haru seemed to have completely lost his mind, cursing loudly. Chelly began to tremble, and he said in a tearful voice, I can't do that. They'll take off my mask. Falcone will kill me and he'll kill my family. I have a wife and children. God, save me. Upon hearing Kelly's prayer, the priest below made the sign of the cross, but he said nothing. Ding dong. Time's up. The clown tapped the triangle and said in a light tone, he didn't make a choice, so the default is no press. Okay, next. He deliberately bypassed the other people and walked to the somewhat aged figure. He said, it seems you're their leader. Well then, I'll give you a special privilege. You can choose first. Who do you want to pick? The old man who was tied up didn't seem flustered. In a low voice, he said, I choose that professor. What? The clown pretended not to hear, banging his triangle loudly and said, he said he chose Falcone. I heard him choose me. Schiller stood up. The Joker cursed and said irritably, you've used up your leads, he can't. Then I'll buy another ticket. Your tickets shouldn't be sold out, right? At least. Schiller glanced at the Joker's suit pocket and said, you definitely have another one in your pocket. I saw it earlier. The clown started rummaging through his pockets, cursing and swearing. After searching for a while, he found a tattered piece of paper. He impatiently crumpled the paper into a ball and threw it at Schiller. The note fell from midair, but somehow it flew toward Schiller, who caught it. The old man spoke up. Even if you have no clues, I chose you just to make a deal with you. I see that you can shake the rules of this game. But I'm sorry, there's no reason for an actor to leave halfway through the performance. After all, I paid for a ticket. I'm not leaving the game. I just hope the rules will change. Which part do you want to change? If you make a request of me, I can choose not to take the clues and instead ask you to do me a favor. Tell me your requirements first, and then I'll consider whether to agree or not. I'm giving up the button in my hand. You can take it away. What, Mr. Meng? Are you crazy? If you don't have a button, what will happen if someone wants to press it to kill you? Schiller suddenly lowered his head, chuckled, and said, it seems you must have been a member of the previous generation of the Court of Owls? I can only say that this method might have worked for your generation, but you have already destroyed your own foundation and chosen the wrong path. Do you think that just because you've demonstrated how to get out of this predicament, they'll follow you? If that were the case, they wouldn't have been exposed. Everyone understands the principle, and if everyone throws away the button, the show can't continue, and neither the audience nor the host can do anything about it. We are not killers. Our goal is not to kill. We just want to see a good show. If you refuse to perform in this way, we will not carry out a massacre, because that would be too boring. But unfortunately, the companions around you are no longer the owls who pursue the ultimate darkness and chaos. They are just shrewd killers brainwashed by you with brutal methods. They no longer have your great beliefs that transcend personal interests. They won't let go of the button in their hands. They firmly believe it's a weapon used to threaten others into not pressing it. Even if I tell them the answer now, they won't be willing to do it. The old man sighed and said, it seems there's no hope. I take back my choice. I choose Batman. As the word was spoken, countless spotlights focused on Batman once again, and the Joker leaned back, mouth agape, revealing a look of utter surprise. He ran quickly to the front of the stage, then waved to the lighting technician, asking him to shine all the spotlights on him. He made faces at Batman, but when Batman ignored him, he rushed into the band, clumsily picked up a drum, moved it to the center of the stage, rolled up his sleeves and started playing. After all that fuss, he realized that Batman was completely ignoring him and just stood there silently. Disappointed, the Joker hunched over and said viciously, I should have tied myself to that. That way, when I say I chose Batman, he'll be very surprised and maybe even smile. At that moment, in Batman's eyes, time in the entire opera house began to freeze. Everyone, both on and off the stage, was frozen into a scene from a play, with each person's expression and movements clearly visible. Falcone was speaking in hushed tones with Father Daniel. His face was etched with the lines of time, but his eyes, beneath his brows, still held a sharp glint. Batman saw madness there, just as he had seen countless nights standing before his son's bedside, wanting to kill the monster. He might have been driven insane long ago. Alberto, sitting in the back row, was silent with his head down. He was also insane. On several nights like this, he faced his father's deep malice and hatred, until he plunged a knife into his own father's chest. Father Daniel, who was talking to the Godfather, was also very old, even older than Falcone. His white hair floated in the air under the stage lights, but his eyes were full of kindness and peace. But he may have gone mad long ago. No normal person would think that a faith could save Gotham, yet he still dutifully served as a priest here. He even became a good priest, but in Gotham, the better one is, the madder one becomes. The same goes for Sheriff Gordon. He may seem like the most normal person in Gotham, but he is a cop, a real cop, a good cop with a sense of justice and unwavering beliefs. Such a person could appear anywhere in the world without seeming out of place, but he chose to stay in Gotham, and he was just as mentally unstable. And the professor, he's just insane. The clown, well, he's gone mad anyway. Batman stood amidst this group of lunatics, watching their frozen movements, watching them stand still on the stage, and then the stage began to rotate. The stage spun faster and faster, and amidst the shifting light and shadow, it transformed into a frenzied vortex. Batman stood at the center of the vortex and was gradually swallowed up. He felt he must be going crazy too. He was convinced that he might indeed be insane. In the center of the rotating stage, Batman stretched out his palm, holding a crumpled piece of paper in his hand. It was the ticket he had received, and also the clue he was about to read. But just now, when Batman opened it, he found that it was completely blank, with nothing written on it. Chapter 183, Let's Laugh, Part 2. He saw the torn, crumpled pieces of paper scattered at Alberto's feet, no different from the tickets in his hand. Just a jumble of news articles and pieces of torn white paper. When did he start to genuinely believe this thing was a ticket? Did he start to think there were clues on it? Was it when Schiller insisted he drive the Batmobile to the TV station mailbox to buy tickets? Was it when they actually went to the theater's ticket checkpoint? Or was it when Schiller and Alberto looked at him with certainty and read out the clues one by one? Batman suddenly realized that none of these were the most important reasons. The root cause was his arrogance. He always held the idea that he was the only one sober while everyone else was drunk, and felt that the madman on stage was no different from the crowd on the street. He disdained to understand him or get involved, so naturally he didn't participate from beginning to end. So he was tricked. There were no clues from beginning to end. It was just a bunch of madmen executing a group of idiots. Do you know what this means? Schiller stood up, put his hands on the back of the chair in front of him, and asked Batman. This means that the joke from before was really funny. Schiller turned and took the popcorn bucket from Alberto, grabbed the crumpled paper inside, and tossed it into the air, saying, "See? This is money. Isn't this what they're after? Isn't that ridiculous?" The Joker on stage stared intently at Batman. Suddenly, he lowered his head, letting his green hair cover his eyes, and asked Batman, "You really don't want to laugh at all? Enough." Batman leaped to the front of the stage. This farce should end. His voice was tinged with annoyance. Before coming here, I pulled up all the historical materials of Gotham Theater, including the construction plans. And in just a few minutes, I've read them all. As he spoke, Batman turned his gaze to the center of the stage and said, "The people who built this theater were once European nobles. To prevent the actors' footsteps from being too loud and affecting the performance, they did not use the hollow wooden stage commonly used in American operas, but a solid stage made of whole rocks. Your footsteps earlier proved this point. From the time you issued the announcement until now, without using explosives, it wouldn't be enough for you to dig a hole in this kind of stage and then plant a bomb." The Joker stared at Batman, then suddenly snapped, "How come you still don't understand? This isn't a detective show. You idiot. Never mind, you'll understand, you will." He twisted his neck and waist, then loosened his tie and unbuttoned his suit jacket. He was strapped with bombs, and as he unbuttoned it, he said, "I told you I should have bought a size bigger. This is really too tight." "Oh, see, you were right, Detective Batman. The bomb's right here. Look, there are so many." The clown hunched his chin back and looked down, trying to make out the bombs hanging on his waist. "I'm about to detonate them. I'll blow you and these idiots on stage to smithereens." The Joker threw away the triangle he was holding, pulled a pistol from his waist, pointed it at Batman and said, "You can't stop me." Batman stood opposite him. Without hesitation, before the Joker could make his next dangerous move, several batarangs flew through the air and cut the ropes suspending the people. The group of people fell to the ground, screaming in pain. The Joker was drawn to the sudden, high-pitched scream. In an instant, Batman rushed forward, first kicking him and breaking his arm joint, sending the pistol flying. Then he punched him in the face, grabbed his neck, pulled him backward, and dislocated his other arm. The Joker screamed and fell to the ground. Batman crouched down, intending to remove the bomb from his body first. Just as he lowered his gaze to meet the Joker's eye level, he saw a triumphant smile on the Joker's face. A scream suddenly rang out from the center of the stage. Fat Haru clutched his neck and fell to the ground, a small iron rod used for hammering triangles sticking out of his neck. Another strong man made the move. He grabbed Haru by the neck, pulled the small iron rod out, and blood splattered instantly. Haru clutched his neck and collapsed to the ground, lifeless. The man said, "You bunch of low-class nouveau riche. How dare you humiliate us, Before he could finish speaking, a gunshot rang out. Cherry, his hands trembling, gripped the pistol and yelled viciously, "I've had enough of you. If you hadn't insisted on throwing that party, we wouldn't have made such a fool of ourselves." 2 people died in an instant, and all the court members began to quickly break free of the ropes binding them. When they were hanging in the air, it seemed that no matter how much they struggled, it was useless. However, after the rope suspending them was cut, the section of hemp rope binding them was not knotted. As the end of the rope was cut, the binding loosened, and the strong men were the first to break free. The triangle and pistol thrown by the clown had already been picked up. In the chaos, everyone was using whatever they could find. Some grabbed broken bricks, others untied ropes. Everyone's eyes were bloodshot as they attacked each other like madmen. But they soon discovered the best place to steal the murder weapon. One person rushed into the orchestra, trying to grab the music stand as a weapon. Another person rushed over to hit him. After a round of fighting, one of them quickly grabbed the violin bow lying nearby, seized the opponent's weakness, and strangled him from behind. He yelled, "You're the one who threatened me just now, trying to make me comply with their demands so you'd get the real answer. Die!" He tightened his grip, and blood spurted high into the air, shooting straight to the stage ceiling like a crimson fountain or a vine climbing a trellis. Batman, who had just rushed over to stop him, was splattered with blood. The strong smell of blood rushed into his brain, making him dizzy for a moment. Only when the corpse opposite him fell to the ground did the murderer suddenly kneel down in panic, saying, No, what did I do? But I did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. I saw him trying to press the button. He wanted to kill me." The same words rang out countless times, accompanied by screams. Batman turned his head stiffly and looked at the stage, which was now stained with blood. The old curtains on the theater stage, which had turned from a dark, blackish red, have returned to a bright red, as if we have returned to that glorious era. He heard laughter coming from the clown's direction, first a soft, breathy chuckle, then a maniacal roar. He laughed until he was breathless, saying, "Ha ha ha ha, you really are." His arms were already immobile, but he still struggled to sit up, then stood up against a corner of the stage, laughing as he did so, choking himself and coughing. "Congratulations, Batman. You've succeeded in your revenge." The Joker staggered over, almost collapsing, but still managed to support himself. "Your enemy is dead, do you see?" The Joker was covered in blood from his nose, but he still managed to move forward and, panting, reached Batman, saying, "Your enemy is so miserable, so wretched." He swallowed hard, his voice like dry, rotten wood, and said with some difficulty, "This is a gift for you, Batman, my greeting present." His voice was full of joy, even a hint of flattery and anticipation. He sniffed, trying to suck the blood back, but failed, which made him look somewhat comical. He said, "Although the gift you gave me was to make me bleed so much, I'm still very happy. I think my gift is pretty good. Look." The clown swallowed again, then shook his head, as if trying to clear his head. "I'm a bad guy. I organized a kidnapping and then got a lot of people to support me. And the TV stations. They can all see it. I admit it was me. I'm a criminal, a villain. And you're a hero. You saved them. You bravely rushed onto the stage, faced the vicious kidnappers strapped with bombs, and showed your wisdom and courage. Then, you successfully saved them, right? Your enemies are all bad guys, a bunch of selfish bastards. So after you saved them, they killed each other and then died." The Joker's tone became increasingly excited. "But you are innocent. You did your best. You are even a hero." The Joker was struggling to breathe, his ravings drowned out by his gasps. Then, with difficulty, he looked up at Batman, staring directly into his eyes and said, "I've done so much for you, And all I need is one question from you. Just one question. Please, Mr. Batman, answer me. Answer this poor man. I'm really badly hurt. It really hurts. The clown cried, but quickly. He tried to suck out the blood from his nose and said, when you see my performance, when you see the enemy you hate being so humiliated, tortured, and made to look so ugly, he began to tremble all over, and he asked frantically, answer me, answer yourself. Have you ever had a fleeting moment when you wanted to laugh? Batman's fist clenched tighter and tighter, the veins on the back of his hand almost bursting out of his glove. The Joker leaned forward, as if trying to press his ear against Batman's chest to hear his heartbeat. The clown could hold on any longer. He collapsed, groaning in pain, but with a snicker mixed in. He said, you can't accept the answer in your own heart, can you? Why do you find it unbelievable? Why do you feel upset? Why do you feel your emotions starting to worsen? A person who thinks he's crazy just because he wants to laugh is the one who's truly crazy, the Joker shouted at the top of his lungs. Why did you do all this? Batman finally asked. He finally realized the difference between this madman and him, and finally stood on the same stage as him, asking him questions and waiting for answers. The clown lay on the ground, his chest heaving as he gasped for breath. Finally, he stopped laughing and said, because I am a clown. I just wanted to make you smile. Finally, as the theater lights went out, Batman heard a pleading tone in his voice. Smile, Batman. Have a laugh, readers. Chapter 184 Arkham Daily Life, Part 1. Name, Philip Best. Okay, Jack. The clown lay in the hospital bed, and Schiller stood beside him with the medical record. He said, you'd better hurry up and bring out your psychologist persona and describe your symptoms, or I'll just write something wrong. Untie my right hand. I want to have a smoke, Jack said, tossing his hair. Schiller walked over and untied Jack's right hand from the bed rail. Jack made a gun gesture with his hand and then aimed at Schiller. Schiller moved a chair, sat down next to his bed, and then took out a tape recorder and a blank cassette tape from the cabinet. He put the tape into the recorder and pressed the start recording button. All right, tell me about your life. Jack pursed his lips, glanced at the tape recorder, then looked at Schiller and said, my name is Philip Best, and I'm a truck driver who works for the anti-gang. Jack rambled on and on about his mortgage and car loan, how he stocked up at the supermarket on weekends, how his neighbor's house caught fire, and so on. Schiller pressed the record button and then said, okay, next. Jack looked at him and he looked at Jack. The two stared at each other for a long time before Schiller said to him, why are you looking at me? Hurry up and make up another one. I need it. Jack tilted his head back and shook it, rolled his eyes, muttered a few words in Schiller's tone, and then made up an origin story for himself. And so, after Schiller had the clown make up a dozen or so origin stories for him, he took the tape off the tape recorder with satisfaction. As the saying goes, trash is just a resource in the wrong place. The Joker's origin story is not only realistic and reasonable, but also rich in detail and quite vivid. As long as the historical background is changed, it can be used as a well-developed false identity. Schiller hadn't forgotten that he had quite a few agents planted in Marvel's Arkham Asylum, and this fake identity would come in handy. Jack turned to the side, craning his neck to look at Schiller, his eyes wide. He said, you know what? I hate two kinds of people the most. Those who are too ordinary and those who are just like me. And you're clearly someone just like me, yet you strive to be an ordinary person. But Jack, the world's most professional psychology master, tells you, you can't do it. Ha 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 ha. After he finished laughing, Schiller smacked Jack's injured hand with the spine of the notebook. Jack cried out in pain, then burst into an even more maniacal laugh, saying, I hit the nail on the head. I hit a nerve. You'll never be a normal person. Ha 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 ha. Schiller took a deep breath and said, after today's consultations, you get out of here and go to a regular ward. Do you know how precious these beds are? Don't waste my time making money. Money? Ha 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 ha. Jack laughed even harder, the hospital bed shaking from his laughter. After a while, he choked and started coughing violently, then reached out to Schiller and said, water, thank you. Schiller didn't hand it to him and he didn't mind. Instead, he stopped laughing, collapsed on the bed, and gasped for breath. He said, that joke was really funny, wasn't it? If there were a movie theater where you could actually buy tickets with popcorn, I would buy tickets for a whole week straight and watch all the movies I hadn't finished watching. Suddenly he became serious, sighed and said, it's ridiculous that they're chasing after money. Isn't it? What's even more ridiculous is that the money they're chasing is no different from popcorn. And the most ridiculous thing is, ha ha ha. He started laughing again, laughing so hard he was shaking. The most ridiculous thing is that there's a madman who knows money is just popcorn, but he still chases after it, ha 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 ha. Why? Because he's gone mad. He actually thinks that as long as he pursues fame and fortune like ordinary people, he can become an ordinary person, ha 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 ha. He noticed Schiller watching silently. Jack grinned and said, "Why are you so serious? Weren't you laughing happily in the theater earlier?" "Because the reason hell jokes are funny is because it's someone else's hell." Schiller stood up again and said, "Watching Batman make a fool of himself is certainly interesting. You think so too, right?" Jack wiped away the tears of laughter with the hand that had been released. He didn't act as crazy as he had in the theater. Instead, he seemed quite normal, yet even more bizarre. "Honestly, I didn't expect you guys to be so supportive. I really love this place. You should thank the Court of Owls. Their continuous downpours have affected the residents here to some extent, and all of them. Even if they don't get wet, they can't help but inhale moisture from the air when they breathe, so everyone is a little crazy. I know, of course I know. Otherwise, why would I announce my plan on TV? I know someone will come, a bunch of annoying people." Jack was gritting his teeth 1 second, and the next he said in a humble tone, "Oh no, I mean, esteemed viewers, someone will definitely do me the honor of watching this poor clown's comedic performance. Except for Batman, who didn't want to come. I insisted on bringing him along. That's exactly what I hate most about the Court of Owls. They created a rain that can drive people crazy, but it's the only thing that doesn't work on Batman." "Those idiots," Jack said viciously. "You're lying again. If this rain really worked on Batman, the Court of Owls would be 1,000 times worse off than it is now." Jack whistled twice, pouting, as if to cover up his lying. He shifted his body, leaning against the pillow, and said as if he had found a kindred spirit, "See, you think so too, right? Batman is actually a madman, but he won't admit it. If some external factor made him mad, that would be too boring. Do you think he really wanted to laugh during yesterday's performance?" Jack blinked. His somewhat cloudy eyes filled with anticipation, and his tone became excited again. "I hid in the alley and secretly watched him several times, watching him break the arms and legs of those robbers." "But he's so serious," Jack complained. "Can't he be a little happier? How can he not be happy listening to the robbers' screams, hearing the criminals he hates most begging for mercy in his hands? If he's happy, why doesn't he laugh?" Whenever Batman was mentioned, Jack would go on, but Schiller had no interest in listening to his nonsense. He tapped the side of his notebook with his pen and said, "I also have 2 kinds of people I hate the most. One is the person who causes me trouble, and the other is the person who causes trouble and then acts self-righteous." Before Jack could say anything, Schiller continued, "It seems we happen to be the kind of people the other hates the most. Since we can't stand each other, let's have less contact. Tomorrow you can move to the next ward and live with Cobblestone." Jack snorted and said, "You copycat." The next day at noon, Schiller had just returned from lunch in the cafeteria when he found Jack squatting at the door of the ward, crying. He was leaning against the door frame, covering his face, and crying very sadly. Schiller walked past him without looking at him, and Jack grabbed his white coat and said, "My God, how can there be such a boring person in the world? How could you put me in the same room as him?" He gripped Schiller's white coat tightly with one hand and wiped away non-existent tears with the other, saying, "He just told me a joke, but even that joke was incredibly boring. He actually said he wanted to open a restaurant, you know? And then he actually wanted to put an iceberg in the restaurant. Oh my God. I always thought dressing up as a bat was weird enough, but someone actually wanted to dress up as a penguin, ha 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 ha. Doctor, they've all gone mad. You have to save me." Jack began to tremble. "I don't want to be with these lunatics." Schiller bent down, grabbed his wrist, and pulled his hand off his clothes. He bent down and said to Jack, "First of all, this is a mental hospital. If you or one of him weren't insane, you wouldn't be here. Secondly, this is not a time for fresh air. If you dare to run out of the ward again, I will expel Batman from Gotham University and send him to study at Metropolis University. You will never see him again." Jack nimbly got up, ran to the hospital bed, and lay down, pulling the blanket over himself. He hummed a lullaby, saying, "Little Jack is going to sleep now, hum hum hum. Let me sing a lullaby." He closed one eye, pretending to be asleep, while secretly opening the other to peek at Schiller's reaction. Cobbler sighed deeply and looked at Schiller by the door, saying, "Doctor, I suggest you move him to the next room." He pointed to the wall behind him with his thumb and said, "Evans must have a lot in common with him. More importantly, if this madman stays any longer, I'm definitely going to beat him up. All right, he can go stay with Evans tomorrow." The next day, Schiller returned after lunch and found that Jack had somehow climbed onto the observation window high up on the wall. He was sitting on the window, clumsily moving his body, as if trying to climb over. Before Schiller could even ask what was going on, Evans roared from inside, "You actually like those musical comedies, and you even insult classicism? I really misjudged you. Those new operas are a complete blasphemy against opera. You're the one who's crazy," Jack yelled, waving his fist as he sat on the observation window. "Those Baroque operas are all outdated stuff. Monteverdi is complete garbage. They have no sense of humor whatsoever." As he spoke, he shook his head and imitated a few lines of singing. His dry voice, combined with his strange singing style, was full of emotion but lacked any technique. He stood high above the observation window, spitting as he rattled off a list of Baroque and classical opera masters, which infuriated Evans, who threw a pillow at him. Putting everything else aside, Evans was quite strong. He stood below and slammed a pillow into Jack's face. Jack, whose arm was already injured, couldn't hold onto the wall and fell straight out of the ward, landing in front of Schiller. He was still angry and tried to get up and rush back to the ward to continue arguing with Evans, but Schiller grabbed his clothes and said, "Do you want to go back and get beaten up? You don't really think you can beat him, do you?" Jack was furious. He shouted, "He doesn't understand music at all. That idiot. Classical opera is just pointless whining. Can you imagine? There are still old fogies who like that stuff these days. Only comic opera and musicals are interesting." Evans leaned out of the doorway, leaning his upper body against it, and shouted, "You're the one with no taste. You damn lunatic. You're the crazy one." Schiller stood by, speechless, partly because he didn't understand opera very well, and partly because he didn't understand madness very well either. Chapter 185 Arkham Daily Life, Part 2. As Gotham City entered summer, the few remaining green plants began to flourish, and Arkham Asylum remained a peaceful place. "Jack, I'm warning you. If you dare sneak into my office in the middle of the night again and scribble all over the walls, I'm canceling your outdoor time for the whole week. You hear me?" Jack crouched in the corner, picked at his ear, and pretended to be deaf. Schiller put his hands on his hips and said to Jack, "I know Batman has started school and is busy with his homework, so he doesn't go out to fight criminals as much, which means you're also quite free. But that's no excuse for you to play these annoying pranks in the hospital every day." Jack muttered a complaint. "A bat doing its homework? What are you guys doing? Am I supposed to praise it as a good boy who goes back to his cave to sleep on time?" Schiller crouched down and looked at Jack, saying, "Okay, Mr. Jack, I admit you're a genius. You're born knowing everything, but that doesn't mean everyone is like that. Batman needs to attend classes, do homework, take exams, and get a college degree. Plus, he has to manage companies and participate in the development of Gotham City." "Boring, boring, boring," Jack yelled. "You'll kill him. You'll kill Batman. I'm here to save him." Schiller tried to reason with him, but Jack desperately covered his ears, shook his head, and sang some nonsensical songs, basically adopting an attitude of, "I won't listen to your nonsense." The two of them were more like two ancient foxes, neither of them trying to outwit the other. Schiller knew he couldn't cure the Joker, but he still dutifully played the role of a doctor. The Joker knew Schiller wasn't a doctor at all. He was clearly a patient too, so he never intended to persuade Schiller. Essentially, the two of them are like looking in a mirror. There's no need for either of them to convince the other. Their stalemate is more like a pastime to pass the time when they're bored. But all of this came to an end one night when Brand's phone call woke Schiller up from his deep sleep at home. "Hurry up and come over here. That crazy guy with the smiley face painted on his face has staged a kidnapping. He says he wants to call Officer Schiller to negotiate with him." Schiller lay on his soft, warm bed in his manor, took a deep breath, and said into the receiver, "No need. It's hopeless. Just kill him." After saying that, he slammed the phone receiver down angrily, then pulled his arm back into the warm blankets and went back to sleep. Less than 2 minutes later, the phone rang again. Schiller rolled over, picked up the receiver again, and put it to his ear. Before the other end could say anything, he said, "Listen, Brand, from now on, if anyone says any of the following to you, I expect you to turn around and walk away without giving them a second glance. For example, I want to play a game with you. Do you want to solve a riddle? Do you want to truly live? Etc. Whenever you hear these kinds of questions, don't ask anything. Don't say anything. Just punch him, and then turn around and walk away." Schiller was so sleepy he was talking nonsense. Brand said helplessly on the other end, "Let me finish. Do you know who he kidnapped? It definitely wasn't you. Otherwise you'd be screaming already. He kidnapped that most expensive and advanced brainwave device that was just delivered last week. The one worth nearly $200,000. Now the hammer in his hand is less than 10 centimeters away from that device. Shit. I'm coming right away." 2 minutes later, a sleepy-eyed Schiller stood at the door of the instrument room. He lowered his head, closed his eyes briefly, and then took a deep breath. Jack was sitting in the room, putting on the brainwave detecting helmet. Because he didn't know how to use it, one of the patches kept getting caught in his hair, and he was grimacing as he pulled at his hair. Seeing Schiller arrive, he grabbed a hammer from the side and shouted, "Police! Listen up! I have a hostage!" Schiller pulled out a medical record book from somewhere and started scribbling in it, saying as he wrote, "You're finished, Jack." Jack sat on the table, shaking his head and muttering something. He said, "There's nothing more boring than playing the most boring game in the world with the most boring person in the world." With a ripping sound, Schiller tore a piece of paper from the medical record and said to Brand, "He's cured. We'll process his discharge tomorrow morning." Brand glanced at the paper and gasped. The next morning, Jack swaggered to Cobblestone and Evan's room to say goodbye. He mocked Cobblestone's idea of an iceberg restaurant and sang operetta in Evan's ear for 2 hours. Just as the two were about to punch him in anger, he triumphantly produced the discharge diagnosis. Then, amidst the murderous glares of the two men, he swaggered out through the gates of Arkham Hospital, waving and whistling at the two men in the window under the sunlight. Before he could even step out onto the street in front of his house, more than a dozen luxury cars surrounded him, and a group of gang leaders in suits warmly greeted Jack. Jack looked around and realized the situation was bad. He tried to run away with his head in his hands, but he was grabbed and dragged into the car. Standing by the window of the attending physician's office at Arkham Psychiatric Hospital, Brand watched this scene and said, "You actually gave him a prescription with all medical expenses covered. Now, every mob boss in Gotham will probably be asking him for favors 24/7. Brand looked Schiller up and down and said, "Everyone knows that the head physician at Arkham Asylum is a bloodsucker who takes every penny he can get, but you deliberately gave him a break. They'll definitely think he's some kind of relative of yours, and that he'll be treated like royalty by those mob bosses." 3 days later, Gordon knocked on Schiller's office door. When he pushed the door open, he found Schiller writing at his desk. Gordon walked over, knocked on his desk and said, "Professor, could you please get that madman out of here right now? He hijacked the TV station 5 times in 3 days, Just as Schiller finished speaking, the news anchor on the television screamed again and hurriedly ran away. The clown's face appeared on the screen. He looked even more insane and haggard. He cried out, "Someone, please save me. Save this poor mental patient. That kind psychiatrist, are you there? Look at me. I'm insane. I should be hospitalized." Then he rummaged through his clothes and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, showing it to the camera. He said, "See this? This is my medical insurance payment slip. I pay so much money every year. But now, I have a serious mental illness, but the only mental hospital in our city refuses to admit me, He started faking tears in front of the camera again. Suddenly, he became agitated, saying, "Schiller Rodriguez, you're the most annoying guy in the world. You let those gangsters swarm me like flies. You know perfectly well that I think they're the most boring people in the world. There is no hope in this kind of life," the Joker said, spreading his arms wide. "The world has turned black. Despair. Despair. Utter despair." He hugged the television camera and said, "Can you imagine? They come to me every day asking me how to make money. It's torture." The clown gritted his teeth and said viciously, "They are torturing and abusing me with their mediocre and boring brains and their monotonous way of thinking. I burned their money and safe, and they actually laughed and applauded for me. This is no joke. The clown's voice suddenly betrayed a deep helplessness. "They are so ordinary that they frighten me." His voice began to tremble with sobs. Luxury cars, fine wine, women, and money. And that damn money. I'm surrounded by a bunch of lunatics. I ran away, but they always found me. The Joker cried, truly heartbroken. They all keep talking about it, saying Gotham is getting better so they can make more money. He started crying more and more bitterly. Everyone is talking about these things. I just can't believe it. The world must be crazy. Come and take me away. Take me back to the mental hospital. I'd rather argue with that stupid penguin or that tasteless, lousy opera singer than hear these disgusting things again. The clown started gagging in front of the camera. He seemed genuinely disgusted. But before he could finish, a gangster-like bodyguard rushed up and handed him a glass of water. The clown gave a, "You all saw that, right? Look," then suddenly jumped up, pointing at the glass of water and screaming wildly, "See, this is how they torture me. Every day is like this. Wah, they prepare delicious food, wine, and money for me, and then bury me with all of that." He gritted his teeth and yelled at the television, "Schiller Rodriguez, you damned, unscrupulous quack. A mental patient is standing right in front of you? Can't you see him? Just let me leave. I'll go anywhere. Just take me to a mental hospital. Do you hear me?" Schiller didn't even look up. Gordon looked like he'd swallowed a fly. He said, "I said before, even if everyone in Gotham is a little crazy, this guy's way too crazy. Who would beg to go to a mental hospital?" Just then, he slapped his forehead and said, "Oh, I forgot. Now every mob boss in Gotham wants to get in here. All right, Professor Schiller, listen, I don't mind you turning this place into a gang's private prison, especially when it's somewhat good for law and order, but that doesn't mean you're going to let a madman like this roam the city." He earnestly said to Schiller, "After all, this is a mental hospital. Shouldn't it admit one or two real mental patients?" Schiller was still writing with his head down. After a while, he looked up, shook his neck and said, "All right, I can reluctantly reserve a bed for him. However, I don't accept insurance companies here." With that, Schiller stood up from his seat, took out the form he had just written, and handed it to Gordon, saying, "This is the repair cost for everything he broke. Once you sign this, I'll admit him to the hospital." Gordon took the bill and glanced at the final price. He gasped, but still said, "This, I'll pass it on to him, but I don't think someone who works as a truck driver would dare to sign such a large bill. Tell him that if he doesn't sign, I'll send this bill to Batman and tell him that his friend Jack the Joker owes me a lot of money and refuses to pay. He's a complete scoundrel." Gordon sighed and said, "I don't know what you guys get out of playing these role-playing games, but whatever. Isn't this a common occurrence in Gotham? You absolutely mustn't say that in front of that madman. If he finds out that you think his game is normal in Gotham, he'll definitely give you a huge surprise."